back to another edition of Cannabis in Canada with Jason Wilcox, coming to you from British Columbia, Canada. Once again, we're here to talk about the Coalition Against Repeal and the update on John Conroy's constitutional challenge. And some of the stuff that's going on, this is going to be part one of probably a 10-part series where we discuss some of the things that are going on that you may find interesting for those that are into kind of the legal side of things. We've been given, John Conroy's kind of given full disclosure with the public record of everything. Basically, we have 1,622 pages of exhibits and affidavits and stuff to read, both the Crown's position as well as ours. And yeah, some really interesting stuff is going on right now in Canada. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, I got a whole list of things here that I've actually went through trying to read. I've read about 1,000 of the 1,600 pages and absorbed as much as I can, but it's a lot of information. It's very interesting to see that what we thought for so long is actually factual. When we see the stats the federal authorities are actually using in the police chiefs associations, for instance. And we're going to get into some of that. I'm not going to be in a hurry, so those of you that don't like looking for a grow video, this one's not a grow video. This is pure politics and legal. There's no, I mean, as far as the politics that go around the legal arena for fundraising, etc. So that's kind of where this conversation is going to go. So in these documents, one of the things I found interesting was that in the police chief association's report, they said that there was 57 of 190 files reviewed by Health Canada, so by MMAR patients. So to me, 57 of 190 suggests one of two things, and so in my own opinion, is one, that they're selective in the 190 reports, and two, how statistically relevant realistically is 190 reports, even if all 190 were bad, how statistically bad is that compared to the 38,000 known licensees in this country? Absolutely silly, small, and anecdotal at best. But I'm not an attorney, and I'm sure Mr. Conroy will hone in on some of these. Another interesting fact is the police chiefs, again, in their Police Chiefs Association report, which is an exhibit in this matter for the Injunction, they say it's $2,800 a pound. I'm thinking, really? What world are you living in? What country are you in? I'm not sure about the east coast of Canada or Quebec or some of the prairies, but I know here in BC, they legalized in Washington, smartest thing they could do, because it dropped all the costs. It blocked the border. There's no cross-border traffic. There's a backlog here in BC. A pound has dropped to 1,000 to 1,300, maybe 1,400 a pound, you know, for really good, top quality stuff. That's the reality of the pricing. But then again, the government don't really have their ear to the ground, you know, with what's actually going on here. And because of legalization in Washington, it just goes to show, get rid of prohibition and you won't have any criminal activity, just like you see it dropping down now. But instead, they're going that route of choosing to open more jails, increase more criminal crimes for cannabis, and put more medical patients in jail, rather than look at a program similar to the US, which is more fair and reasonable when it comes to accessing one's medicine. So, the other thing that's very important to note is there's been discussions. David, Professor Hutchinson, and myself have had many debates around this. Outdoor production is not permitted under the MMPR, period. That's it. There's no more. I mean, a greenhouse is considered an indoor structure. I'm not going to debate that. But as far as the MMAR language goes, we're arguing that issue of no outdoor, because it makes no sense. You know, I mean, it's cheaper, safer, you know, everything's safe. But either way, cheaper, don't use electricity, a lot more efficient. It is just a herb, it's a plant, you know, and it's never killed anybody. In fact, in their own documents, they state the equations of what it would take to kill a rat, because they managed to do that with a heavy concentrate, but they've never been able to kill a human. There's been no known lethal dose, and they admit that. That's in the police report. So they know all this. But they still claim that there's some sort of threat to ourselves. And that we need to control this. If there's never been a death, I don't see how mold even plays a factor into this. Because if molds were attributed to marijuana, or sorry, if deaths were attributed to marijuana, they would definitely be using that in the media right now. I promise you that. We got a 150 gram limit. Now, sorry, have to medicate for this. This is a bitch. This is just messed up. I don't care how you look at it. It's unethical. It's almost the government. For those of us who've been around for a decade in this MMAD, Medical Marijuana Access Division, and governing MMAR, Medical Marijuana Access Regulations, we know that it's simply bullshit. 150 grams is a 5-gram license. That's all it is. And for years, for a decade, Health Canada said 5 grams is the average prescription. I call bullshit. You know, I want to see the real statistics because we know 5 grams is not the average. But now they induce a mandatory minimum purchase of 150 grams. Now sure, you can purchase your whole amount in 5 different purchases. Like for me, at a 25 gram a day limit, 5 different purchases. That means I get taxed, and for a different container each time, the weight for shipping and handling gets put onto me 5 times because I use more than the guy that's new, that's only using 5 grams, or maybe isn't as sick and using it for as many different things. Not to mention we'll get into concentrates when we get to that. But it's interesting to know, and this is stuff that's opening to dialogue. On Facebook, we have 2,000 members in climbing talking all about this. You know, going through the excerpts, going through the documents, discussing this, as well as raising awareness and funds for Mr. Conroy's fight. But it's important that we discuss this stuff rather than continue to ask questions that activists can't simply answer. All we can do is read these documents and try to assess them for ourselves and open the dialogue. Dialogue starts and ends it starts and ends with awareness. You know, we start with dialogue, we go to awareness, and of course that ends up in funds for Mr. Conroy because people become aware of this fight and what the government's doing. Now this 150 gram limit, what does it mean? It means yes, your prescription's going to stay the same if you have 25 grams, as I said. But if we do not win in this challenge for any reason, and again, I believe we will. Don't get me wrong, my position is we're strong. However, if we weren't, that would then put you in that position that 150 grams, and Mr. Conroy is arguing this on your behalf, so it's very important to know we are arguing this, but you would be in the position, even right now, if you have an ATP, you're in that position because the MMPR is in force. It's just not in full force yet until March 31st, 2014. That being said, I wanted people to understand that because the 150 gram limit was very confusing the way that they have it languaged. 150 grams or the less is how they have it worded, and 150 grams or the less. To me, I thought it meant 150 grams only, and that would mean a 5 gram a day prescription forced on us, and that's not the case. It's just simply that we're being forced to pay a lot more tax and a lot more in the shipping and handling for 5 different orders, rather than simply giving us 1 order in 1 big container and not paying for 5 different containers. Because of the weight for shipping, and for those of us who've done shipping understand that weight matters. As I said, this might be a bit of a long discussion, friends, and for those of you that want to tune out, can. For those of you that care about your permits, you might want to listen up, because this matters. If you don't want to read through the documents, we'll help to break them down for you. That's what we're here for. This is a national effort. Mould. The one thing that we want to look at, the government's going on still about public safety, and the stuff that they have on mold, it doesn't define which molds they're talking about in the variety of molds, nor do they show any statistical data of the mold actually being there and being a threat. They have studies that say mold can be a threat, and you know that's a fact. And we know that, and there's houses with black mold that are just brand new because they weren't constructed right, you know, and they can be a threat, they can kill you. You know, but we don't go shut down all the building projects. You know, they're inspected, of course. And if the government had inspected us and done their jobs, rather than trying to use city green teams who don't have the right to really come in, maybe they'd actually have gardens under control and not try and say they're a public safety threat. But the problem is, even though they're saying it, the mold, and I'll move on to the fire, both the mold and the fire don't exist. What I'm reading in the federal documents and in the Crown and the police chiefs, what I'm reading is a lot of reports that simply are anecdotal. They're isolated police reports. In most cases, they're in reference to actual MGOs, marijuana grow operations. So they incorporate medical marijuana grows and illegal marijuana grows into marijuana grow operations, so that the acronym encompasses both statistics. You know, it's another little sneaky trick. But either way, you combine them both, they still got crap. You know, there ain't no statistics there. And I've said this since day one. I believed it in my heart. There was no freaking way that I'm a public safety threat. I have not seen the fires. I have not seen the mold. And I am immunocompromised for 20 years and I have never been sick. So it pissed me right the fuck off when I read that stuff. I had since my very first movie, over 16 months ago, my very first movie, I lost it. I had to swear fire and mold don't exist. Here it is in stats and facts. It don't exist. You know, other than in the police documents, and other than in, again, anecdotal cases, and again in fire documents, anecdotal cases, 190 files, 57 investigations, 190 reviewed, not even investigated, reviewed files, and only 57 of them had problems. You know, my guess is those are probably likely police calls. But when you look again at the thousands and thousands and thousands, being 38,000 people, it's very, very minute. And the fire and the mold thing, again, friends, I don't see it other than the fact you're going to read in those documents a lot of stuff about how there was a big explosion at some house, and there happened to be a medical marijuana grow operation there, but nobody ever checked to see where the explosion happened from, or whether the fire started in the kitchen and the marijuana grow op was in the basement. And it was because of the grease on the stove, which, by the way, is accountable for 30% of all fires in Canada in 2010. Stats Canada. Google. Check it out. Are we to take all deep fryers and all grease and say it's under federal control, it's a public safety threat, it's got to go out in commercial district, it's got to be controlled by the feds, only LPs can deep fry? Are you fucking kidding me? That's how freaking ridiculous this sounds. It's really freaking dumb. And I'm really loving this because I'm able to talk the way I want, about this issue at this point, and just be real. I don't have to put on any political face. I don't have to put on any sort of leadership face. I'm just being real with you from one patient to another about how I feel around what they're saying. Because I felt this way when we started this, and I still feel this way now. I'm not a criminal threat. I'm not a public safety threat, and neither are you. And I agree that in our bunch, I'm sure there's some bad apples. Just like out here on this street, there's some drunk drivers, and they're going to kill somebody today. But we don't pull all the goddamn cars off the road. We'd rather deal with the drunk driver. So those bad growers, deal with them, government. Deal with them, Mr. Police. But don't throw all 40,000 patients under the bus, or 38,000 according to recent stats, in the police documents. So, I'm sorry, I'm ranting a bit. I'm just going to call this my coalition rant, because that's what this is. It's a motherfucking rant about who I am. Because I'm getting mentally and physically sound again. I'm getting ready. There's 420 coming out, Global March. There's a lot of stuff to get ready for. And it's going to take some pumping up and getting ready, because you know what? Everything comes down now to the war room. The coalition has accomplished its mission. Getting the lawyers in front of the courts was our mission. In 2012, 2013, raising awareness was our mission. It succeeded. Where we failed was in the funding. And we never really set out to set the funding. We set out to keep Mr. Conroy retained, which we managed to raise, I think, $60,000 with no case filed. And I'm pretty proud of that. So now with the case filed, we're hoping that a lot more people will step up. Again, join us on Facebook. Go to Facebook, go MMAR Coalition, version 2.0, join the group. 2,000 people are in there now. Come join us, talk about it. Let's open up the dialogue, let's unite. Because when this coalition is done, the coalition against repeal and that coat of arms you see is done. This coat of arms that's on here, this is done. When this is over, it gets dissolved. It was designed simply to be dissolved. The coalition is nothing more than a movement to repel this kind of crap, And that's why we got Mr. Conroy there. We knew that, at least I knew when I started this, and my friends that helped me start this, knew that we could not afford this on our own. There was no freaking way. $250,000? No way. But could a national collective of medical patients do it? So far, we've demonstrated we can. And I'm proud of that. And I love y'all and respect y'all. You know who you are. You know who stepped up. And I respect that. Because there's people who do the walking, and then there's all the yapping and talking. And I appreciate the people that walk in and talk. And those that simply sit back and do the walking. And those are the people who I like to say are watchers. They're kind of quiet. They don't need to post out in public. They're more humble in their approach. And I love y'all. I know who you are, and I respect y'all. And I just want to give that shout out as well. Even though this is a rant and frustrating, at the same time, there's a lot of good things. This stuff just makes me mad because it just solidifies that everything I was mad about 16 months ago was accurate, you know, and I look forward to seeing what the federal crown has to say. I'll just move on here. The one thing I'd like to point out, at the end of the day, what I've read and again, I'm not an attorney, I'm just an activist, but what I've read in the Crown's statement of defense is basically, in summary, that they do not find gardens to be protected as one, a Section 7, you know, security of the person, and nor a reasonable right to access, because it ain't gonna cause no harm. It's like, hello, pharmaceuticals, they actually suggest Sesame, Sativex. Go ahead, take some synthetic crap. We got it for you. Oh yeah, and you can pay Big Pharma for some more for it. Don't take that herbal free stuff that's working for you now. Come buy our shit. Are you freaking kidding me? Even if you got Sativex, it's out of range for price. Most doctors won't prescribe it and it freaking doesn't work. Anyway, again, it's a rant. Now, you LPs out there, I know, some of you know me, and we've talked, Now, what you're seeing is what I suggested. In fact, in the own solicitor of the Crown, the Attorney General, okay, or Assistant Attorney General, who's the solicitor in this matter, who wrote back the statement of defense, stated very clearly that 8 LPs are currently got license to grow. Whether they're listed or not, I don't know. There's 8 out of 20 that will be licensed by March 31st. Again, 20. Now those of you who may recall 16 months ago, I told you the original projection by the Medical Marijuana Access, or whatever they call themselves, MMPR, they actually projected in their backgrounder only 56 licensed producers would be granted. No, I said there was 300 people in the queue. I honestly thought there was. I think it's more like 400 they said in the document. I don't have the exact stat, but it's definitely over 300 people, Canadians, are in the queue. But only 20 licenses are going to be issued. Funny, they said 56 licenses in fiscal years 1 and 2 of their business plan. In fiscal year 3 and 4, they add 10 or 11 more licenses. But then they pulled that because everybody got pissed off. Well, now you all that went and invested all that money, time, effort, obtaining genetics, hiring lawyers, filing paperwork through lawyers, and all those other cash grabbers, you know, I really feel for that. And I hope and I pray that the licensed producers, if they get fucked the way that it appears they're getting fucked, and I'll say this is my rant, this is my channel, and this is Jason Wilcox talking, just myself, you know, this is wrong. The licensed producers having 400 Canadians in the queue, 8 people having license permits already, most of them all well over $1 million, you know, a lot of them still gamma processing. In fact, another thing is that in the government, or in the solicitor, the Attorney General, the Assistant Attorney General says, hey, don't worry, we got excess supply. We got all kinds left from Prairie Plant Systems. Brett Settle stuff. Really? No fucking shit. It's called look at the goddamn statistics. We didn't want your gamma radiated canna crap. It sucks. Okay? We don't want it. It's 12% THC. It sucks. Okay? It doesn't work. And it cannot be used. Okay? And then they go on. And then they get into extractions. My God. They get into the extraction part, and holy shit, you wouldn't believe that they just simply say it's flat out illegal, you know, and it doesn't matter how they look at it. There's just no way that they're going to find a reasonable access to have extractions. But yet we have a case in R versus Smith where a lower court found that the science behind it was fair and accurate. And those of us who are medicinal certainly know that concentrates are what you need, you know, medical concentrates. And that's what's so frustrating to me, is knowing that this stuff's out there and that they've taken that position on extracts. And the fact that licensed producers, you know, and many of them who had good hearts and good intent and came from our industry and knew our industry, unfortunately aren't the ones doing it. Now some of them are getting bought out and hired out, as we know, and that's okay. You know, that goes with an entrepreneur and changing market. What's not okay is when Canada starts to put monetary gain over top of the Constitution. which is what this fight was all about. We know that between 2012 and 2013, ironically, 10,000 licenses in Canada were issued of the 38,000 that exist. What happened the previous 11 years? Kind of fucked up, isn't it? We need to seriously ask ourselves some questions as what's going on. Not only was this program, the MMAD and governing MMAR, was it designed to fail initially? Is that why the stats were so low? Were there so many barriers? Kind of rhetorical question for me, because yeah, we went through numerous court cases to knock them down. And this is kind of like the Hitler's final solution. Let's just abolish all gardens. And that there's no constitutional right to reasonable access in accordance with Section 7 and Section 1 in relation to gardens, according to the Crown. Now, of course, our position is the exact opposite. So the battle lines are certainly drawn, my friends. They are drawn and drawn hard. You know, a lot of our affidavits and experts. I'm not going to go through all the names. I really suggest people go to our website. It's available there. Go to johnconroy.com. You can check it out on John's site. Click on MMAR litigation, and you can find John's information there. And it's the same stuff, the links to be able to download all these documents, study them for yourselves, and this way we can allow Mr. Conroy to do his work and prepare for March 18th, where these documents will be heard in a motion. In the meantime, all these documents are subject to be cross-examined, etc. So our jobs are really just to continue to raise awareness and certainly know what's going on. I'm going to come back in future movies with a lot more accurate stats, a lot more accurate facts as I continue to go through the documents. Converting them all and getting them all organized was the first part. But it was just very interesting to see that, and I wanted to make sure that the LPs out there that are wondering, who keep getting compliance, you got to comply, you got to comply, you got to comply. You're getting compliance reports over and over, and I think that that's just wrong, you know. And again, 400 people in the queue, you know, waiting, applied applicants, okay, wanting to be licensed producers, paid lots of money. And there's 8 that are going to be licensed, okay, or that are licensed, and only 20 are going to be licensed by March 31st. So I wish you all luck in being one of them, and I seriously hope you take my advice now and start to form a consortium and check in with other lawyers around what the constitutional rights are to a legal and free and fair market. You know, that's not like alcohol. We're not repealing a drug that kills or a drug that harms. We're repealing a herb, you know, that is already deemed medicinal and has over 95% of the public support in Canada. It's very wrong that the Conservatives think that they can pass legislation such as this and simply walk away. It's time for us to rely on the justice system and hope that this is going to work. And as a collective, I believe we will. This is Jason Wilcox, and I'm going to see you in part 2 in probably about another 3 days when I can come back with a lot more accurate stats and facts, and maybe some of this chatter can go on the YouTube channel. But I suggest going to Facebook once again, MMAR Coalition version 2.0 on Facebook. Come join the group, 2,000 of us there, or come to MMAR Coalition Against Repeal.com and check out our website, get your information there. And the update on the privacy matter, I get cross-examined next month by the Crown Attorney, Federal Crown, for my affidavit. Once that cross-examination is done, I believe the case then goes for certification, and however all that stuff works. And because there's a big consortium of firms on that matter, I can't really update you any further than that, except that the case is progressing forward exactly as we wished it to. And the federal case is well protected. So once again, this is Jason Wilcox, and we'll see you in part 2. Cheers.
A business is blossoming at a hydroponic shop in BC. Sales have been smoking hot ever since 2 U.S. states legalized marijuana. The company, called Green Planet, carries everything anyone would need to grow plants, any kind of plants, indoors. In Colorado, it is now legal to have 6 marijuana plants in a secure area.